do, beef stew? What it do? All right, gang. You know what it is? It's time to record another awesome edition of the flow. All right,
Whoop
so
whoop.
here's what we're gonna do. Remember, folks, if you have questions, drop them in the comments with Q colons, so that way Luis can find you, and then we can have those questions for the Q&A. We're gonna do our recorded session first, and then after our recorded session, we'll drop it into a little Q&A, and then you know how it is. You know how it is. Anybody that's brand new to watching the Flow Riders record live, let us know in the la shade, so that way
Yeah.
we can say sup to you.
And if you have any great ideas for upcoming episodes, you can definitely drop those into the comments live. We'd love to hear your ideas.
And yes, before anybody says so, we are having major weather here in the islands, which also means, hey, connection. For no matter what, my state is on the entire state is Wi-Fi.
Well, it's a mild snowstorm here. Like I could probably have gotten into the office, but it was gross out, so I feel your pain. I'm like, internet's better here at
So
home,
the
so I'm
the
gonna hang
funny
here.
thing is, the last time this happened was like in 2006, and it started in mid-February, and it started became a joke, like if it was going to rain for 40 days and 40 nights, because we went like 2 weeks solid and it didn't stop. Well, it started in the middle of February and it's been legit like 2 weeks solid,
Oh.
heavy rain every single day. The sun would come out and lie to everybody for a little bit and be like, "No, no, just kidding," and then it'll go back. So it's good because we needed the rain, but you know what you over asked maybe? I think somebody over asked. So right now it's literally been like about 14 or 15 of those 40 days. So I'm super curious if we're gonna have another one of those events. The last time it happened, legit 40 days, 40 nights on the 31st, it stopped. And so it became kind of a joke, except for all of the damage we
I
had to
was gonna
fix.
say, yeah, except when the locusts started coming and the frogs turned out from nowhere.
Oh, we
It
got
got real it
frogs.
got real crazy.
Frogs are automatic in the tropics, right? We have these little weird frogs called coqui frogs, and if you look at the picture like online, you go, "Oh, cute little frog," but they just make this noise that is really, really obnoxious, and they're an invasive species to Hawaii. Like I don't know
Oh,
how they
no.
got here, snuck over by some kind of like boat, and they do so much damage, but they make the most obnoxious noise. So like we're gonna ruin your place and laugh at you while we do it. That's basically that's the Cookie Frog in a nutshell.
Oh, I love it. I love
All
it.
right, so let's get started with this little showgram. Sorry, I'm trying to type something at the same time, and you guys know good and well your mans can't type. So like it is
We put
literally
we put Doc in charge of typing because that felt like the best idea.
oh no, because I'm using a different profile, I can't get the comment straight. So I'm logging in and I make all my passwords insanely psycho so that they can't be cracked.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when it comes time to have to one password, you just press button, right? But when it
Yeah.
comes time to manually type a password,
Oh, yeah,
it
over.
literally
Yeah.
is an act of Congress over here. So this is why it's kind of hilarious right now. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We're gonna do our little our breaths, and then we will kick it off with the top of the hour. Okay, let's woosah this bad boy. Counting it down in 5, 4. Aloha, Flow Riders, and welcome to another edition of the Flow. What is fantastic about this episode? It is episode 30. So
30.
we said, I'll take your pod fade and raise you 23.
Oh, I love it. And I feel like we're just going to continue to celebrate all of these wins. We're going to be like 40, yay, 50, woo, 55. So
After
just, yeah,
55, it starts
whatever.
to hurt.
Nope, going to continue to be excited every
No,
single
I
time.
meant like in
Yeah.
age. I was joking.
Oh, yeah, I gotcha.
So
No, I'm like,
so
no.
here's a funny thing about it, and you say we should continue to celebrate these, and you're right because you should. I think that's something that a lot of people forget to do, and sometimes it causes you to miss out on what is the greatness that you're doing
Yeah.
because you get caught up in the caught up and you forget to celebrate the victories.
Yep.
So, for instance, Aubrey, who's in the chat, gets yelled at all the time by me because she said, "Oh, I was doing this thing and there was like only 10 people." And I was like, "Only 10? That's 10 people that decide to stop and listen to you, right?"
We
You
have
know what I'm
10
saying?
people
So
on right
you
now live. They were
right.
it's all
Exactly.
good,
So
yeah.
you should never do it. It's a only because that doesn't really feel the same. It mess with you. It totally mess with you, right? Yes, I've seen streams where they have thousands. I watched one the other day that made it close to what 8,000,
Yeah,
but
8,000, yeah.
I can tell you what, at that point, it was a cluster F. Like it would have Paul would have melted. We would have had to
Paul's
go
face would
back
have been
there.
melted right off, yeah.
Yeah, we have to resculpture Paul. So yeah, in a way, yes, please, people, whatever you do, anybody doing your podcast in any way, shape, or form, every little victory, man, celebrate that because you're doing better than you think.
Yeah. And that honestly is like an amazing segue into today's topic because we've done one of these episodes before, but I feel like they're important, especially as we're talking about podcasting and video podcasting and all of the updates and changes that have been going on in this space. Is a what we have learned episode, except it's spun a little bit differently. Today we're going to be talking about what we didn't know when we got started that we know now, which is going to be difficult for you, Doc, because you've been doing podcasting for way longer. So maybe it's me answering what I didn't know, or maybe you're thinking through like what you didn't know about what's different with this podcast. I don't know. We'll figure it out as we
No,
go
I
along.
think I think there is things that you learn, and see, this is funny. This is why everybody should journal their process, no matter what they're
Yeah,
doing, even if you think you know what
video
you're
journal.
doing, and it's or video journal it better if you're trying to get used to speaking. It is helpful to go back and figure out what you've learned that you didn't know. It is helpful
Yeah.
to find out what you've learned in general. So yeah, there you go. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. But like literally what we were just talking about, one of the things that's been on my list for what I didn't know going into podcasting, or maybe a misconception that I had, was that I was like, well, we're Ecamm. We have the Ecamm fam. They show up, every time we ask them to show up. So like we're gonna have a pretty consistent live audience no matter what we do. And I don't think we do all the time. Sometimes the numbers are really high, sometimes the numbers are, lower. Like right now we only have 10 people watching. But again, it's not really the point. So I feel like I had some of those numbers in my head too, or some of those conceptions of what the live recording experience would be like, because we are, or we have traditionally been a live streaming tool, and a lot of the focus of this podcast has been experimenting with the balance between live video and video recording and audio and the podcasting space. So if you're sitting there and you're like, and you're Aubrey and you're like, oh, only 10, me too a little bit. And really, I don't think it matters as much as we've all been told that it matters. It really is a slow burn. And there's all with podcasting, there's also all these pockets of audiences, which I think I knew, but I don't think I really fully appreciated. So there's the live audience for us, there's the recorded audience, there's the audio only audience, and the audio only audience is split among all of these different places. So it's a different thing, a different beast than if we're live streaming on YouTube and doing our usual live, where it's just our, not just, but it's our live viewers and our replay viewers, right? There's now these additional audiences, and you kind of have to take all of those numbers together for what your grand total is or what your goals are. So that's that's definitely been my kind of first like, I got that one wrong. And that's definitely not what the actual experience is like. So
I think one that I can definitely say that it's gonna sound corny and cheesy, people, but I don't mean it to be corny and cheesy. This is the reality of the facts of life, Tootie. Um, I knew Captivate was pretty dope, but I always used it as, turn it on, it's working. Okay, stop. But in the process of trying to be more produced like a podcast instead of just random musings of me,
yeah.
I've been digging deeper into what it does and like digging
Yeah.
deeper into things like growth labs and like
Yeah.
Amy. And now I built a template around for our show notes and I'm starting to get a
I
little
saw
bit
that.
deeper into what it does. Man, I gotta tell you, like, and okay, yes, I'm speaking to you from a Captivate standpoint, but I'll be dead honest. I don't want you to pick that up as an ad, but you might be using Podbean or Buzzsprout or the stupid one that begins with an A. Um, Probably dig deeper into what the feature set is of your host than you think.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for a long time. I don't think I've ever really dug into some of the other feature sets that hosts have, because once you have your XML processing to Apple and therefore the other places, you're winning, right? And it's
Yeah.
very easy to do that, right? So I liken it to uh driving, right?
Mm.
So before I've driven forever. Like I started driving when I was like 11. Um I started
16.
driving legally at 16, okay? But I've always loved cars, I've always loved driving, and I think part of it is because my dad and my grandpa and my uncles, they're all car guys, and so, yeah, I literally started driving mad early, with this little tiny Renault 18i. It was the funniest looking car ever, like Steve Urkel. When I came back from Japan and having not drove for, like, a year, I
Mhm.
decided to go all out and then buy my first Beamer because it was always my dream of as a kid. That was my car on the wall, right?
Yeah.
A- After you get a car of that nature and you drive it, people don't understand. If you don't like cars, does not going to make any sense to you. But anybody that's driven, that's ever actually went out and bought a Mercedes or drove for a long time a Mercedes or a BMW, you do understand the difference between a car and a car. Like there is a massive difference, and it's not just four wheel engines and tires. Unless your hands and feet do not feel that, then this is not going to make any sense to you.
Yeah.
But once you do that, it makes you start digging more into what cars can do. It makes you start digging
Mhm.
more into what the suspension type things is and what the shift curves are, and all of the minutia that can be in the driving machine, no pun intended. And once you understand that, it's a whole different appreciation for the road, right? So
Yeah.
I feel like with Captivate and maybe people who would actually take the time to dig deeper in their podcast host, if it's not Captivate, it should be. Uh, you might find there's tools there that will answer the question that we get every freaking time we go somewhere and talk about podcasting. How can I get more people to listen to my podcast? Your host
Yeah.
might have tools to help you with that. Ours does. you know.
Yeah,
So I
actually,
was a guest on Growth Lab, and I mean now I'm digging into the Growth Lab content. I'm like, oh my god, there's a lot in here. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I completely agree. I think and that's like again one of those things that I didn't realize going into this. Like I am definitely a planner I think that I'm a planner and an organized, fairly organized person. And I think one of the coolest parts about this process that I didn't expect was that it's so iterative. It's so adjustable. There's so many different things that you can do with it. And I think the tools are part of why it's such kind of a fluid experience that you just get started, right? We're always saying like just get started, which is exactly what we did. We just got started. We knew our why, we knew our, the reasoning behind what we wanted to do, we knew our audiences, but we did just get started. But we've been making even at the beginning of today's episode little adjustments as we go, and they've had a huge impact. And whether that's, getting to know our tools better, or updating our process, working a little bit differently with Luis, having him come on and doing, the production side of it and remote producing for us. Even, like I said, even earlier today, we were like, oh, maybe Luis just directly uploads into this folder instead of, this other process that we were doing. But I think the tools are so much that and I do this across the board since the moment I started working full time. It's,
Yeah.
I'm wearing multiple hats. I'm doing tons of different things. And so I only ever use the tools and the software and the apps that I have for what I need them for. So it's, even Descript, which I was, listening to you last week's episode, which was all about Descript. And I was like, oh my God, I use this tool every day and I don't use half the features that Harmony was talking about. And so many of them would actually improve my process if I just spent the time. And so this podcast has been great for kind of getting me out of that mindset and being like, oh, I can block off a little bit more time. It's part of improving the process. It's going to save me time down the road to figure out what are those tweaks and adjustments. How do we kind of continue to move our plan a little bit closer so that it's saving us a ton of time and making this process better. And I don't think, worked on anything that has been this sort of fluid and friendly in that way. Like, other projects are usually just much more rigid in that process. So that's been really nice, and I think really unexpected, and plays on the tool side as well as just the general process side, is just the chance to constantly make it a little bit better and be really happy with those small steps.
Yeah, I think you just said a couple things that are super important. Many of us grab tools and we use them for what they're used for. So we thought, right? And it turns out like I remember talking to a buddy of mine about just everyone has a standard tape measure in their house, right? You know, you pull it in on the end.
Yep.
There's like 5 different tools on a tape measure that most people don't even know exist. You know what I mean? Like
So true.
that little piece
Yep.
at the end that we use to hook the table, what that's
Yep.
actually for is for marking the wall. So like if you're putting up a shelving or something and you find the stud, you just grab the end and you go and it makes a little, scratch in the wall so you know where to put the nail. You found the stud, right? There's like all kinds of little unique features inside of a standard issue tape measure that everyone has, but they've never really understood what it's for. So
Yep.
they just use it for a ruler, right?
Yep.
And I think that even something as simple as when Luis and I when we came there in what October,
Mhm.
like, oh, we're gonna set up the camera and we're gonna put into memory all the right settings on the memory one. So no matter what kind
Exactly.
of craziness Ken and Glenn do, you can always get you back to where you belong.
Yep.
Right. How many people in here have a camera that has a memory function and you've got your settings for this particular show, or so not this show, for your show dialed in, and you've never saved that to a memory slot so you can get back to it in case of an emergency, right?
Yeah.
Like I just one of those things that people they don't, you know me, I'm always into like, oh well, how come I bought a dummy battery? Everyone says you could just plug it in with a cable because you didn't read the manual. It's legit on page 6. And we're not talking like
Yeah.
a gigantic surgery manual. It's a tiny little book. So page 6 is the equivalent of 1/3 of a real page. And had you done that, you would have saved $50 on a dummy battery if you're a Sony owner, because we don't
Yep.
need them. Right.
Yep.
It's legit in the manual. So yeah, I think it is take the time. It will save you time in the long run, might save you money in the long run because there's people, buying extra tools when they already had a tool because they're not really going past what a tool can do. So I think that's a fantastic one. Make sure you keep that in your nugget brains.
I'm gonna clip it up, and I learned. I literally, I'm not even making this up or speaking to like be some level of authority. I was literally in Descript earlier today, going through last week's episode to get it online later today, and I was and Harmony was talking all about the templates, and I was like, templates. Why have I not used templates before? And
Bruh,
I
right?
you just said Captivate in all the show notes. I had gone maybe a couple of weeks or week or two after we did the episode talking in detail about why we loved Captivate, and that was one of the things that had come up. We were like, oh, we hadn't done that yet, and I had gone into Captivate, and you had beat me to it. I was like, awesome, we're progress here. We have the
Right?
templates down. We have so yeah, it's those little steps and those those things that were created for a reason. Like if you've chosen the right tools, they are catering to people like you, right? Captivate is catering to podcasters. Descript is catering to video creators. So it those tools likely exist within the software or the tool that you've purchased. So you might as well look through and see if there's something that's going to save some time.
And I don't know if this really makes it more manageable or not. It's just a thought I had in my head for not Captivate, for Canva. When we go to generate thumbnails, or in this particular case, podcast art, I created it as a presentation and I set the presentation to a size of 3,000 by 3,000.
Yep.
And the reason for that is every additional thumbnail, I'm not editing the master. I'm just adding a page and changing the
Exactly.
graphic and downloading the
Exactly.
last one.
Yep.
And the reason why you might want to do that is if you ever run into a situation where you need to recover all your podcast art, you
Yeah.
didn't just take the same one and replace the words.
Yeah.
Now you got to create them all over again.
Yep.
So when we're at episode 150, if we need to find for some reason the podcast art to episode 8, I can just get it. Right.
Yep.
So simple little things like that, with templatizing or making a system, making a here we go, people. Hold on to your beer flow
And that's a drink. It's afternoon here, so it feels like it's okay.
It's 7:30 here, but it's still dark outside, so I can't tell. I
Coffee
was
shot, coffee sh
confused.
coffee shop
I
for
was
you. Yeah.
confused. Yeah, so the stuff that you can do templatizing and making your job easier, is really good. And you know what's funny? A lot of the ideas to templatize thing comes from Caleb. Because Caleb's
Mhm.
always sending me things or asking me things like, "Oh, I want to make a template to do X, Y, Z, Z, Z." So whenever they send me, that type of stuff, I'm like, "Oh, maybe I maybe I can templatize something else." So that's what really made the want to dig deeper into some of the tools. So if I had to pick a concise answer to something that we learned that didn't really learn before, it's learning to dig deeper into tools because some of what you need is already
It's already
there,
there.
like a '80s rom-com. Oh my
Yeah, I'm looking at this list 'cause in typical Katie fashion, I was like, "All right, what are we gonna talk about this upcoming episode?" So again, ideas welcome. If any of you listening or watching are like, "We would really love this information," definitely send that in to us. But this question just came up over and over again as, as I was just looking for, popular things that people are looking for as far as podcasting or video podcasting when it was just this like, what have you learned, examples, tips, tricks, all of that kind of stuff. But some of the ones that other people had suggested were things that they didn't know when they got started. And I knew this one, but I'm gonna throw this out in case other people may not know this one. But the answer from a lot of people was that podcasting takes a lot of planning and organization. I think a lot of people that go out there, right? Like our podcast is literally about workflows and planning and organization related to podcasting. So we knew that it was going to be a ton of that. So much so that we knew we could build a show around it. But I think a lot of people don't realize how much goes into it. They think through like, whether or not they think they can get monetized, whether or not they, what kind of gear they can afford or how they can build out the space or what kind of guests that they want to bring on and their audience and the content and the topics. I don't think that they think a lot about, what their workflow is going to be or what the process is going to be or the plan or systems or how they don't approach it. I think a lot of people in the business mindset, even if it's not a business podcast, like even if you're not doing it professionally, you're doing it for fun, there is still a process that you need to build and a plan. And I think that, this point is absolutely right that podcasting is a lot more planning than I think many people are aware of. And I knew it, but again, maybe I didn't know it to the extent that it is, and even starting my own personal podcast, it's definitely, I'm certainly replicating the same, process and planning that I've done for, past podcasts and certainly this one.
So I think I hear a couple things in there. Here's one that I always want to posit to everyone that says that they want to do content creating as a business or
Yeah.
they want to do podcasting as a business. And I'm like, at the end of the day, is your business goal revenue or impact?
Mm.
And most people are going to go, well, both. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna need you to pick one
Nope, one
because
or the other.
well, here's why. You can do both. I think we do both. But I do have to say that when it comes to people's turning their creation process into a business or their podcast into a business, they forget the most simplistic form of the business formula. And I swear, if I were to ask everybody right now, like, what's the revenue equation? They're not gonna remember, but it was legit,
Yeah. Yep.
accounting 101 at, what was it, sophomore college or
Mhm.
freshman college year. Everyone had to take accounting. You basically got units times price. That's it. And if every business in the planet, I don't care what you're selling, ice igloos, whatever, like in order to get to revenue, you have to do units times price. Well, podcasting is free. So how many units do you need? You know what I'm saying? So, like,
Mhm.
it's a failed equation from the gate. If you get into podcasting because you wanna be monetized, you will hurt, you will cry, you will get frustrated, and you will stop doing the more important size, which is creating impact.
Yeah. And
When
that was
you
another one on
create
this list, right?
impact,
Was the money side
yes.
of it. So yeah, which again we knew going in, but I think it's a good one to talk about for sure.
And if you put that in your dome, like there's only, I ask any economy teacher or accounting teacher or business teacher in the planet at any school from Whiskey Bottom to Wharton, what's the revenue equation? It's units X price in the story. There's no other equation. If somebody got one, please come at your men's because that's the only one that I can think of. Well, because there's no price to podcasts, that is not the easiest way to get monetized. Now you can go straight to a paid model.
Mhm.
You are probably lessening the amount of people that will come unless you know ahead of time you have an audience. If you
Yeah.
know ahead of time, I have an audience and my audience is 1,000 deep, and I can get 200 people to pay $20 a month for this podcast, you're in a different boat. And as Diana would say, may the Lord bless you and keep you always.
I miss Diana.
So do I. That's a shout out to Diana right there, right?
Oh,
So if you're lucky enough to have that, I won't say lucky, please take that away. I'm sorry I said that. If you have done your labor under correct
yeah.
knowledge enough in order to make that happen, more power to you. But for the general person starting their true crime podcast, they don't have even a way to get any parts of the math equation started. Now, once you get enough units, right,
Mhm.
which is I have the following of say like 1,000, then you might be able to go to somebody else, like say Ecamm, for instance, and say, I have 1,000 people that listen to the show based on doing virtual productions as a lawyer. And we're creating this podcast and we want to know if you want to sponsor. Trust me, we get these emails every day. Um, we could look at that and say our cost of customer acquisition number is X and they have 1,000 people. The average conversion rate is 4%. So if we get 40 people to sign up for Ecamm, it is worth X. And then Katie will say yes. And if it's not worth X, Katie would be like some weird Canadian nice way to be like, hell no.
To be clear, I never say hell no. I do have a nice Canadian way to deal with it.
That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
no,
You got
I
a policy. That's why I'm not in charge of it. I mean, like, are you high? That would be my answer.
No, I think it's a really good point, and I do think that it's a huge we've said this a ton on this podcast, but it's a really, really big misconception from almost everyone that gets into podcasting is that and even if they know and they've heard, you're not gonna make money at this or it's gonna be really hard to make money at this, I feel like in the back of their mind, they're like, "Yeah, but" they continue for it. So it does, like if you are going to make money at this, it is going to be a lot of work and it is going to require everything that starting a new business would. So you should really think of it as, as the same as a this brand new baby business. You are in startup world and you are going to need to hustle and work hard and build out a plan and, and be able to activate against it. And so it is not like then you are taking it past a place of fun thing I want to do or passion project or I'm trying to impact people and you're taking it fully into the financial side. And that's fine, but you need to have the plan and those steps to actually get you there and be really realistic about the amount of time that it's going to take because again, millions of podcasts out there, millions more joining all of the time. So you're not alone in this space and we are past the point of if you just create it, people are going to immediately show up and you'll become beloved and everyone's favorite podcast host. It's going to take a lot of time and work, and you're going to need to have a really solid plan to get there.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's really one of those things. Like, um, and I think that's the thing that's crazy is I've done podcasts where I started out with talking to a buddy of mine who trusted in my process and was like, "Yeah, I'm going to sponsor your hosting and all of that stuff." And you just put, a read about my law firm in the bottom of the show. And I did
Yeah.
that and that worked out, right? So I monetized before I started. And what that did was that took away the cost of, at that time, Podbean, right? I didn't have to
Yeah.
worry about Podbean because it was covered every month by my sponsor. But that was called being smart enough. My Podbean bill was basically $20 a month. And then so I knew I wanted to do at least a year. So I went to the person and told him this is what I want to do. You do 20 times a year. And he's like, bet I'm in. Let's do it.
And that's
Right.
a
So
really
you
low like, that's a very different ask to just be like, a lot of the asks that we get or a lot of the a lot of people out there, right, are like, "I want, $5,000 a month. I want" like, they're you're thinking about it many people are thinking about it as, "I am this level of, of famous and audience," but maybe if you're especially if you're just starting, yeah, an ask like that is great. Maybe there's a friend or a partner or a business that makes sense and you're like, "Hey, I need 20 bucks a month to cover my costs, but I'm new. I have this vision. Here's my plan. Here's how I'm going to grow it. I'm going to build this audience and you're going to get in from the ground floor." That's a really smart way to approach it because again, it's not a huge ask. That's not a big
Yep.
ask from a lot. That's not even a big ask from a friend, right?
Yep.
So or maybe it makes sense to bring on in that case, if you can't find a business to do that, maybe it makes sense to bring on a co-host or a partner or a producer, someone that also kind of wants to explore it. And then the three of you or two of you, whoever, split the cost to get started, and then you're able to kind of expand your network and build it that way. But yeah, I think that's a smart,
So
realistic
here's a
way to
good
approach
way.
it.
If you have a little bit of gear, so like Rodecaster Pro is really good for this because it is portable. If you have a little bit of gear and you do have a co-host or something that's with you, and you have a
Mhm.
little bit of a local following, what we used to do is record ours at a local bar on a Sunday
Oh,
during
that's
a
smart.
time where they would be
Yeah.
no one's there. Right? They opened at 2 p.m. on Sundays to get ready for the Sunday night sports sort of extravaganza that goes on in many people's neighborhoods. But they were basically dead for the first 3 hours, and then they would pick up at the last rush right before the weekly sporting event. So what we did was like, listen, can we come in and use the place in this corner over here, the quiet corner, and do our podcast from here? And during the whole time of the podcast, we were reminding everyone to come down so they could watch the University of Hawaii, play XYZ. And
Yeah.
they were like, "Yeah, cool," because we were helping them, right? And at that time, live streaming was still semi rare. A lot of people didn't know what to do, but we were doing everything. We had a person sending out tweets the whole time. Twitter was the most common way
Was
to
the
do
thing.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
What they ended up doing was building us a man cage type set, right? They put the nice little chairs, they had the books, in the background, and so, yeah, we would record. You could pick a local restaurant, local bar, or somewhere where you can help out, like, if you have a podcast that would sort of help out a particular place, right? Maybe it's a coffee shop. If you have a part of their time that's sort of, not busy, find out if you could go and record there, and you sorta make them your sponsor, right?
Yeah.
And we know what they did every time? They fed us. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't need to, we there are a number of different ways to look at sponsorship, right? So like, yeah, that they're sponsoring the space. You're not asking them for any direct, financial compensation. You're not saying like I need, whatever hundreds of dollars. You're like, I just need your space. And hey, well, I'm here, maybe a discount on drink or food or like you're building that, yeah, you're building that relationship. Yeah, I mean, and again, which I learned really recently from a friend of mine, and this is embarrassing that I didn't know it earlier because I work for our library. I volunteer for our library. But many libraries in many cities also now have recording rooms where you can literally book time for free using your library card, to be able to get up and running with your podcast. And that might be a really great way to get started where you are able to leverage, a quiet space, professional gear, a lot of the tools there and potentially build relationships with other podcasters and other creators that you're seeing coming in and out of those spaces. So yeah, I think it is a really great community, podcasting in general. Certainly video podcasting is kind of the specific in that where there's a lot of opportunities to, to bounce ideas back and forth or get to know other people or collaborate with other businesses. So I guess on the flip side of the monetization conversation, there's just a ton of other opportunities if you can be really clever and and think a little bit outside the box. So
I think there's so much that you can bring to the table. Now, You know, I think another thing that just doing different shows sometimes help out with is I am learning what this is gonna sound super crazy, but I'm learning that what I know that I think is breathing oxygen is the Pythagorean theory to other folks.
Yay! Doc has learned this.
Well, you gotta
It is
rub it
very
in,
true.
Katie.
No, it's very true. No, it's and I'm on the flip side of it. So I am totally the person that's a perfectionist, and when I don't know something, my default is to be like, I can't. I need to be alone to figure this out by myself because I don't want other people to think that I'm not smart or that I don't know my stuff. So it's been a good challenge for me on the other side to have people like you and Luis be like, nah, we're staying on this call until we all figure it out together. And I'm like, I'm good. I'm gonna go over here and just figure this out by myself so that I look smart. And both of you and Caleb and others in this space have been like, no, we're going to be on a, we're going to stay on a video call. We're going to work it through. Like, it's not that you don't know what you're doing necessarily. It's that sometimes we all need to troubleshoot something and we need to figure it out. And it's better to keep showing up and to remain consistent than to panic and shut down and not do something. So I certainly have learned that. I don't know if it's something that I didn't know before, but it's something that this going through this process has forced me to do, and I'm really appreciative of that. Last night, today even, I'm like, Doc's internet's not looking perfect. So we gotta cancel the show. We gotta come back later when we look our best. And that is not always the answer. It's not even
No.
kind of sometimes the answer. So I think it's great. It's great to go right. And Aubrey is saying in the chat that live happens, and I'm a big believer that like while you are live, if something happens, I've become really comfortable in laughing that off and being fine with that. This is like almost a weird different perfectionism where I'm like, oh, I'm behind the scenes, and if something isn't working, I just want to be able to kind of dig deep and solve it myself, and I don't always need to solve it myself. In fact, it's many times way better for everyone if I just let people help or troubleshoot it. So I'm the opposite side of you. You're causing the complicated theories and for people to feel like they're out of their element, and I'm like, peace. I'm gonna go figure this out by myself.
You know what it is? It I think we do a good job of it, but of course, there's always room to grow this thought process. I
Yeah.
think we do a fantastic job of understanding that you don't have to take yourself so seriously,
Yeah.
right? I know a lot of people that are here representing their brand and representing their software would be afraid to do what we're doing today is record this anyway, even though my internet is doing something dumb, right? But
Yeah.
guess what? Our software has the ability to record. So the thing that I'm going to send Luis that becomes the end product will be glorious, right? But it's also this is not a bad representation of what goes on with our software. This is a representation of the internet is the internet, and don't none of us control it. As a matter of fact, there is no single controlling body. There's
Yeah.
about 300 controlling bodies, and they have to attempt to work together as a consortium. So what does that mean? It's more likely to have problems here and there. And one of the problems is nobody can defeat weather. It's just impossible, right? So
Turns out
if
we
I
can't
if
take
I
it
can
away.
say, hey, Tuesday morning, 7 o'clock, I gotta do this podcast. So Hawaii, I need you not to rain and no wind and no trouble. This doesn't happen. So
Yeah.
what do? You have everything set up in a manner that you can do what you need to do, which is record locally, right? I was having a conversation with someone in the Facebook group, and this was legit their attitude. And I'm going to say it in the snarky way because that's how I heard it, because it's not that hard, but yet people freak out. It was like, oh, so you expect me to tell every one of my guests to record with QuickTime and send you a file? And I'm like, yeah, because until Ecamm existed, that's how we always did it way back from 2004. It is not that difficult. Your guest could be a chimpanzee and you can tell them how to record locally. It's not that hard. But here's what I would do. I would make an instructional PDF or an instructional video walking them through the steps and send that ahead of time so that you could also test it during the tech check and
Mhm.
then test their ability to find and send you the file during the tech check. But everyone wants to skip the tech check. And
Don't please,
I
yeah,
know
don't
this,
skip that tech check. It's so important.
right? I know this because 2 things. 1, somebody said in the, group yesterday, "Oh, we've done this show like 100 times, and all of a sudden it's not working." And the show just wouldn't work. We had to cancel the show. And I'm like, "Okay, cool." So you cancel the show, and I'm digging more. Turns out they did the tech check weeks ago and it worked, but they haven't checked it since. Do you know what has happened in those weeks? Chrome is updated. We have updated. Mac OS is updated. And you probably installed 3, 4 new apps that you didn't think you installed, but you just did. You forgot about. So you have to do
Plus
tech check every time.
weather and internet and everything
Right?
else that,
Just
yeah,
random things.
yeah.
Now, in the times when is I've been bit in the butt is because I tried to skip tech check. I know what I'm freaking doing. And I still the times where it bites you in the butt is when you try to skip the tech check. That's when the tech check reminds you, nah, homie, that's not how we do this right here. Watch this. Nothing works. Nothing works. Camera don't work. Cam link pissed off. Something happens. So you can't skip that stuff. It's super important. It's like skipping going to the gas station. Eventually, your car ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This we're not supposed to break into question and answer, but I'm going to break the fourth wall. Tam, not Tam. Pam says, "Do
Pam.
you tech check every guest?" Absolutely.
Yes.
Insert your favorite bad word here, lutely, because the
We tech
one
check
that you don't.
ourselves every single
Yes, we
week.
tech check ourselves every week. This is
Yeah.
our show, and we tech check ourselves every week because no matter what, the one that you skip will be the one that explodes. You
And
don't know why,
honestly,
it's how it works.
it has really become my again, you just heard me say that it is an not issue. I'm trying to think of a good word. Maybe I'll just go with issue. It is an issue of mine that I there's something about like failing quote unquote publicly, right? So it's like, I show up and my camera isn't working and I can't figure something out and I'm feeling stressed and frustrated and I'm there in front of Doc and Luis and I'm like, these guys are, quote unquote smarter than me. They're not having camera problems. I'm frustrated with that. That is an annoying thing for me. It has become really a great experience forcing myself to do it, having them force me to do it. And sometimes I'm fine. Obviously, I'm fine and everything looks and sounds fine. But it's those times where I have forced myself to, to ask them what I've done wrong, to explain how, my camera is connected to my computer or what things I'm using and have them walk me through that process. Learning from those experiences, and the same thing when I'm asking questions from Ken and Glenn or anyone else on my team, and forcing myself to ask tech questions, and I'm probably using the wrong terminology. Every time that I'm doing that, I'm learning the correct terminology. I'm learning the kinds of questions that people ask when they want to, when someone is having an issue, when we're doing a tech check. And I'm then able to get better at explaining what my situation is, what my setup is, what's happening to me. And I'm able to help my guests on the shows that I do without my team, if they show up and are having an issue, I'm now way more comfortable to say, okay, let's walk through these things that may be causing your issue. And I feel much more comfortable in helping those people troubleshoot because I've forced it myself to be really uncomfortable and to feel, you know, all of my feelings while I'm going through that while it's happening to me. And it's one of those things that I think is a little bit difficult if you're a person like me and you're a type A, need to do it myself kind of person, and you want to be able to figure it out yourself, or you're really frustrated and you don't like how that feels. It's a good process to force yourself to go through. And we meet 15 minutes, 20 minutes before every single episode. Most of the time it's just fun. We're chatting and hanging out, but times where things go wrong, and we're able to talk it through and help each other, support each other as a team, and be able to put out the podcast. So I think it's a really great. So Pam, I like you were saying that you haven't had a lot of guests on yet. It's really fun to play around with. Get a couple of friends to just, come on, even if you don't even bother live streaming if you don't want to, but just play around and test, ask those questions, figure out where those pain points are. For us, it's usually, something's gone wrong because we have a different setup for a different thing that we're doing and we're bringing it in, or like today for me, I just got back from vacation. I brought all my gear with me, so I had to reconnect everything. And even though I've had this setup work multiple times, my camera was being weird and there was something going on. So it's a great way to kind of just spend time together and also just teach each other and learn more, about that process. So the more comfortable you are as a guest, the more comfortable your guests are going to be with you.
I'm uh, I'm laughing because Sean said you got to find joy and craft. Just in time problem solving is part of the fun sometimes. 100% agree with that because we enjoy it. Like we get a kick out of it. It also gives
I'm
us
like,
an opportunity.
"Ugh."
Well, it gives us an opportunity to show the audience how to walk through things calmly
Yeah. No,
and
it's true. It's been really good for that.
let
Yeah.
them see. And I just wanted to answer Sean back because A, he has an awesome name, and B, he spells it correct. I don't know what the hell a scene is. Anyway, so Rich had a very important point. And yes, Rich, we do have a checklist. The checklist is available. I'm sure Mr. Moderator got a link for you if Mr. Moderator is even here. Did I see Paul today?
Yeah,
Paul
Paul's
might be under weather.
no, Paul is not here today because Ecamm Live Academy is
Oh,
running right now. Paul's
Academy.
helping
There
out
you go.
there. Yeah.
I was like, Mr. Moderator's missing. So I can send you a link. We do have a link. It's under the Flow freebies. But let me explain it just in general for anyone who's listening to this at home, or maybe you're driving, you don't have time to click a link. The first thing you do is you want to check for audio levels, of course, right? Make sure that your mic sounds nice. Check one. Make sure that your guest microphone sounds great. And then the second thing that you would want to check is just to see like do a sample recording, do a sample live to the platform that you're going to. Now, we don't have to do that because we go live on our platforms all the time and we kind of use YouTube, which is not a weird thing. But for the most part, we don't really have troubles with YouTube except last week. But,
We
you
learned
know,
we learned an important
but
thing.
we learned exactly how to do it and
Yeah.
we learned exactly how to solve that problem if that problem should arise, which is if you ever leave a stream like
If you
not
miss a
done.
stream and you
Yeah,
unlist it, so it's
thank
past
you.
the date, but you unlist it, then when you go live again, it goes live into that stream, even if it's unlisted and past its date. So just
Correct.
delete it. Just delete it out,
Delete it.
or I don't
There you
know.
go.
Some yeah.
I was about to make that way more complicated. Good job of making it
It
simple.
was it was
Okay.
my fault, so I took the I took the credit for that.
So the other things that you could check in the lighting. You could just check into making sure that your person on the other end is cool, right? So, and I don't mean cool as a, of course, Katie's cool, not that kind of cool. I mean, like
That they're
learning,
calm. Calm, cool, and collected.
understanding that,
Yeah.
okay, these are the potential things that will arise for you, right? When and if, this is super important to Ecamm users, right? To your guests, when and if you should get disconnected, just refresh your browser and come back in. And what will happen is it will automatically place you on the stream and you'll be set up. You don't have to touch anything. All you really need to do is quit Chrome and come back. So you can explain to them that happens. You can also explain to people. Um, this is a big one. My if you watch inside the Ecamm community when people are trying to resolve problems and they say they rebooted, but it didn't really work. My brother would say, look, it's important sometimes to actually shut down opposed to just restart. A restart isn't actual a hardware reset. Sometimes it's only a software reset. So you
Mhm.
want to shut all the way down and come all the way back. And then they go, oh my God, that worked. I can't believe that worked. Because there is a massive difference between rebooting and like shutting down and powering it back on. So
Mhm.
sometimes you need to tell people that. You just explain to them how to get out of a weird situation. You explain to them what to expect when expecting. Good movie. um, and then just make sure lighting, sounds, everything is good. So Andy's you know add on to Rich's question is well, how long you it should take you 10-15 minutes. I mean, it's really not a super complicated thing. And I think the other thing you can do with your guests, if you are the type of person that has a show flow, no pun intended, you can explain to them how the show is going to work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so
Go
jeff
through
and
the
jeff
scenes.
and
Yep.
what Grace, there we go. Oh gosh,
Yep.
she's gonna hurt me. Jeff and Grace will see, like, okay, we're gonna have you come on, you're gonna be in the back end. We're gonna do our introductions and salutations. We're gonna talk about this, that, and the third, and then we will bring you on, and Grace is gonna read the bio. And then so you know exactly what to do. And at the end, they'll let you know that they're gonna stuff you in the back room for a couple of minutes, but don't hang up. They're gonna say their buys and tell people how to, get the podcast. And then at the end of the show, they'll come back and bring you on. And then, for us, we would tell the guests we're going to save time at the end for a Q&A. So when you disappear off the screen, don't hang up. Stay right there because we'll come back for Q&A at the end. So it's just those are the things you do in the check. It's super simple.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too what's been good about the tech check in addition to everything that we've just said is that it, it it's also okay if in the tech check, so say you have your 15 minutes or your 20 minutes and you're there and something has happened and you're troubleshooting and you're getting closer and closer to the time when you are scheduled to go live or when you need to go live. It's okay if you go a couple of minutes past that because you are solving a problem. So again, if you're me and you're a perfectionist and you're like super time sensitive and you're a planner and you really people are waiting and you're panicking about that kind of thing, take a deep breath, finish text checking and solving the issue at hand, have a moderator or a friend or someone pop onto the chat and just be like, "Hey, we'll be there in a couple of minutes. We're just, finishing up solving an issue." People are not going to just like rage quit your live and peace out because you're a couple of minutes late. So give yourself a little, I would say 95% of all of the tech check stuff and troubleshooting is remaining calm. And I am certainly coming at you from a person whose default is to command Q and peace out and just give up when things get really scary like that. So if you are that person, I feel you. But it really the more calm that you can stay and just be like, nope, we're gonna solve this problem. We're gonna show up, to the level that we want to show up, and it will be okay. It's not none of this is life or death. None of us are doing live stream surgeries, I would assume. So it's okay. It's gonna be okay if you're a couple minutes late, if you let people know that you're just solving an issue. You would rather have your guest look and sound their best, or you yourself look and sound your best, than showing up flustered, or so it in the best case scenario, you spend those 10 or 15 minutes chatting with your guest and making them feel really comfortable, and telling them how excited you are to have them on the show and going through what the show is going to look like. In the worst case scenario, you're solving some issues, and maybe you're a couple of minutes late because you're solving some issues, but you'll be fine. It's going to be fine. It'll all be fine. I think we, like Doc said, we kind of overthink it to death and are such perfectionists about it that we're like, okay, no, like we're, if it can't be this way, then not at all. Or if it can't be this way, then, then we're in full panic mode about it. We just need to force ourselves to go through the process because you get better every single time you do it. And it can be a really fun experience all the way through if you can get out of your own head.
I think Todd mentioned something really great in the chat that I want to make sure that we get in the thing. First of all, you had me dying at live stream surgery. um,
That's how I approach every live stream. I'm like, if I don't show up, people will die. So I need
like
to be
that
there.
that is so good. Todd said that in his friends fishing podcast, they always say, remember the knots. And again, that goes back to my original point. To me, again, I've legit been podcasting before Apple even touched the subject. Like when you had to write the XML by hand, then it came out an app called Podler. We used to use something called, oh my God, what's it called? Okert or whatever. It was like one of the official original podcast directories made by like Kevin Rose, which eventually became Dig. Like it was way back in the day before Apple added it to the iTunes store. And the reason why everybody thinks Apple has something to do with podcasts is because of the iPod, but it's
Hmm.
not. It's not really the case. Way long time ago, and I think because of that, there's just certain things that I know that I don't know that I know just like that, right? For instance, everybody in here this whole time that we've been doing this podcast, you've probably blinked somewhere in ordinance of 300 or 400 times. You don't know most of the day that you blinked unless there's something in your eye or there's a cute other person in the coffee shop, you're trying to hit them up with a couple of blinks, but you just blink, right? It's reflexive, right? So I am again realizing that things that I do somewhat out of podcast reflex that other people don't know, and those are great opportunities for me. So no matter what your subject matter is on your podcast, like a strip it down to the basics episodes, right,
Yep.
would be there. And again, also not being afraid to ask the question. I tell you what, after all the time we hang out together and consider we talk to each other no less than twice a week, and like it's literally one of my best buds, I never would have expected in a million years that Rich would ask, like, hey, what type of stuff do you check? but he's just double checking to make sure he got it right. He
Yeah.
doesn't see that as, oh, I'm going to look bad if I ask this question. No,
Yeah.
I'm going to learn if I ask that question, because it'd be actually more crazy to assume you know and be missing some stuff. I'm sure we didn't tell Big Rich anything he didn't know, but it's good to double check anyway, just to make sure you're getting it right. I appreciate that level, because there's people who refuse to do that, and that's where you find yourself in hot water, if you will, right? You know what I mean? This is super weird, but there's people getting stuck in their car because of the weather,
Mhm.
and they don't know what to do.
Mhm.
And it's like you never thought about that. But I tell you what, if you live where Katie lives, you should understand what to do when and if we get stuck in the car. What is our plan of action? It's no different than the fire drill. And with
Yeah,
the way the
you
weather
should have
has
seen
been
us
lately,
yesterday. Yeah, we were
right?
like, "Okay, snowstorm, we gotta get wood inside so they can dry out, so it doesn't get snow on it. We've
Have a
gotta
plan.
go and fill our gas container in case true New Englanders know what to do when there's a snowstorm. That's for sure.
Right? So you gotta have a plan. And having this plan for what to do in your podcast, and I'm gonna give you guys a home run before we jet. So today is, this Tuesday, February the 28th, and our podcast came off without a hitch today. But let's just say, in supposition, something were to happen next week, and here it is, March the 7th, and we cannot pull off a show. What do we do? Put a post, apologize for not being there. That totally works.
Mhm.
Um, you know, tell our audience, hey, you know what? We're gonna try to recover this recording on Wednesday because our schedule permits. All right, that'll work. But have one in the can.
Mhm.
We don't have one in the can.
We
Should we
don't, we
run
should.
into it?
Yeah, we
Until we
should.
run into it, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen one
It's
of
gonna
these
happen.
days. Leap is coming up soon. I'm gonna be at
Mhm.
NAB soon. Like,
Yep,
something's gonna happen where we're gonna need to just run one, and we don't have one in the can.
yeah.
So if you can, please put a couple in the can, have yourself ready. Now, to make sure that we don't get stuck, what I want you guys to do is a little homework, okay? I want you to flow at ecamm.com, or through Volley, or many of the other ways you have to get a hold of us. I want you to send either podcast questions or podcast testimonies, like what you've
Mhm.
picked up from the flow. Please send that to us in a video format, not vertical. I want them to be horizontal. I can make verticals after. um, so that way we can build a mailbag show should something happen, like Massachusetts or Hawaii decides the weather's not cool, or
So true.
I'm in an airplane, because I will be in an airplane pretty soon for a couple of minutes. So
Yep.
yeah, so we can pre-game our show by doing what we're doing right now. So I'm going to ask you guys, please send us either a testimony or a review or a podcast question, even a tip, something that you've learned. What have you learned since you've been podcasting? Like,
Yeah.
anything that you feel is helpful, send it to us, and then we'll comprise that. And you might not see it right away, because we're going to save it for one of those days.
But
Just
we
one of
promise.
those days.
Exactly, we promise. We
It's
promise you
coming.
will see it.
Well, I'm thinking the day that we do Leap into Live Selling, the second day, we might not have time to do the flow.
Yeah, we're not gonna have time to do the flow.
A-
And actually,
and
I'm
that's
thinking
coming.
now, next week we're gonna be an hour later than normal because we have another special super awesome workshop going on. So yeah, we're going with the flow. We're gonna move back and forth. We're gonna have some episodes saved. We're gonna have all kinds of different
Yeah,
things
let's
because
get
life,
just get some down.
yeah,
Get
life
some down,
happens.
have it ready. So that way you can. And you know what? One of my favorite podcasts is Mac OS Ken. And Ken will just come on and be like, guys, I got all of my stories done. I did everything, but I'm just not feeling it. I can't record today, because he lives in Buffalo and the weather can get to you up there,
It's
right?
crazy up there. Yeah,
And he's like, I'm gonna just lay in bed today. I'm super sorry. I'll be back tomorrow, but I don't want to give you a half-ass show. I'll give you a double dope one tomorrow. And and nobody cares. Everyone is so supportive of Ken. Like, nobody cares. They're like, yeah, Ken, man, enjoy the break. Like,
yeah,
just take the day off. So feel free. And this is for those of you who like seasons. This is where seasons come in, right? So
yeah.
far, like, we haven't done seasons, but hey. Might
But hey,
change. Who knows?
yeah, we could decide episode 40. We're like, well, that's season one. So we'll take a bit of a break and we'll come back. Yeah, no, I think that that is absolutely valid advice. And I think we're about there. We gotta. I know you have your stream coming up next, so should we wrap and
Yes.
head up to questions? You kind of went through all of our end of stuff, but maybe we could do it one more time.
So Jerry, I tell you what, I want to save your question for next week to do it as an actual episode. So Jerry's question was, any tips to eliminate ums and ahs and other filler words? They're killing me. That's such a good topic, and it's kind of a longer answer. So I
Yeah.
want to like completely save that and do an entire show about that next week, an hour late.
Yeah, and Jerry, if you didn't last week's episode, which is dropping later today at the replay mode, but you can go back and just watch the full episode here on YouTube. But last week's episode, Harmony did cover that a little bit with with one of the tricks that she uses. I mean, obviously Descript removes all of those words after, but she did cover a little bit on see it. I just used it. She covered that just practicing and listening to your episodes afterwards are going to help you see where you say ums and uhs and so's and what's the one that we say all
Oh,
the time?
mine's is so like nobody's business. So and
Oh,
and then
mine is I say this like I probably
oh, you and
5,000
Michelle
you knows
both.
in an episode. And it's still a problem for me. I'm still removing them, but as I go through, but I'm more aware of it because I forced myself to listen to it. So that's my short answer to your question for now. But we should do an entire episode just on yeah, getting better at presenting and getting better at removing some of those words from your vocabulary.
Oh my god, it's so funny because I am super, super bad at so then we're gonna so we're gonna okay. Anyway, so guys, thank you so much for another dope episode of the flow. Um yeah, this
Like
is really great, Katie. No, and it's made me think of it like this was just a really great episode because it is nice to go back and think of the things that you learn because it gives you an
so true.
opportunity to celebrate what you've done and what you've been able to accomplish. Quick reminder, this episode has been sponsored by the script,
Mhm.
and the script is hands down one of our favorite tools. We talk about it ad nauseum here, but if
We
you're
do.
definitely looking into improving your not only your podcast performance, but again, I spoke earlier. People like to know, how do I get more listeners to your show? That comes from promoting. And one of the best ways to promote your show is with audiograms or short
Mhm.
clips. And the script can help you generate those very simply. And don't think it's complicated. If you can edit a Word document, you can make nice short reels for Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube using Descript. So go and give them a check out at descript.com and then watch the episode that's rolling out as soon as Katie finishes with it.
I know,
And
yeah, I gotta
it's in the
go.
script. It's in the script right now.
It's in the script
Um,
right now. Yeah.
the podcast episode has already dropped in your podcast player, but
Mhm.
you can go and you'll see exactly how to use it. It's so simple. You will just enjoy it. It has made editing a lot more fun. So
Yeah.
go and give that a look and check it out. We'd like to thank you guys for always being part of the showgram. Flow Riders, you are 100% rock stars. If you know anybody who's starting a podcast or struggling and just looking for some answers, please by all means share this with them. Sharing a podcast and writing reviews in the Apple Podcast application are the best ways you can support a podcast. That is our version of monetizing, where we tell you to go buy some stuff, is to go and leave a review and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Because I don't know who need to hear this, but
But someone does. Multiple people do.
but, but someone does. Those are some of my favorite Instagram posts. I don't know who need to hear this, but so yes, thank you so much. And all I can say is glory, glory, man united, champions of the Euros. Ooh. Sorry. Anyway, Luis, you can play the music.
Bye, everyone. We'll see you next week.